deliberate. We pray your blessings upon each and every one of them and their families. We thank you for your mercy. God, we declare this day a great day, a good day, in the name that is above all names, and that name is Jesus. And I'll say, Amen.
Amen.
Our Father,
who art in heaven,
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and glory, forever and ever. Amen. God's blessings.
Thank you very much, Reverend Eileen. Thank you, Senators, for entering the chamber. I started over. Yeah. The minutes, please.
I don't know. I don't know what the story that you tell me, you put everything on my list. So,
While we gather to move on to the order of business, we'll have the adoption of minutes. Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Carl Bethel.
thank you, Madam President. I beg leave to move for the adoption of the minutes of the last sitting of this Honorable Senate, held on the 20th day of June, 2019. If I may obtain a seconder.
Morning, I rise the second.
It has been moved and seconded that the minutes be adopted. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The minutes are adopted. Now, before Senator Mitchell stands, I would like to say that I did speak with the clerk to ensure that those changes and amendments to the minutes prior to the minutes we just adopted do reflect the division that was requested by Senator Mitchell. And I assume that those corrections and amendments have been made, clerk, and we should at least have view of that, please. Okay. Senator, was there anything else? Yes, I spoke to them about that. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign, swearing in of new senators, communications by the President. I just want to say that the female senators had an opportunity this morning to meet and to say our farewell to the Governor General, and we thanked her for her service. We believe that her representation as Governor General for the Bahamas was exemplary, and we do thank her for her service. She is also going to celebrate her 87th birthday on Wednesday, so we want to wish her a very happy birthday on Wednesday.
Madam President,
The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Carl Bethel.
thank you. We wish to join you in your expressions of warmest felicitations, love, and appreciation to the present Governor General, who will be demitting office by the end of the month, shortly after her 87th birthday, and to acknowledge, firstly, the stellar service she has given to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. As I always say, at every step of her adult life, from the time she managed to be captured by a young rising politician named Lyndon Oscar Pinley, and go on till today and going forward. She is truly a mother of our nation. We speaking on behalf of the male senators who were not granted this right of audience by no doubt, we think, the diktat of Madam President. We demand gender equality. We are hurted that we were not given that opportunity. But we do understand, Madam President, and appreciate that having regard to the struggle of women for all forms of equality and all forms of empowerment, that, we understand why it was important for the women senators to pay that tribute as a group, although we do feel sorry that we weren't invited. Thank you very much, Madam President.
I suppose you'll get used to the fact of how women feel when they're not invited.
Yes,
Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Clay Sweeting.
Thank you, Madam President. I would also like to share in thanking the President Governor General, or actually Dame Margaret Pinley, for such an exemplary job as Governor General. Just a few months ago, she visited Spanish Wells and North Luther as well as the rest of the island. And I must say, no matter your background, rich, poor, white, or black, she makes you feel loved and welcomes you in whichever setting she has. And, I must commend her for that, because every time I'm in her presence, I'm just in awe about how she makes you feel so welcomed and at home. And whether she's with the Queen of England or with someone on the street, she, of course, is a woman to admire. And I also must give my apologies for Senator Jo Beth, as she is in the Turks and Caicos Islands now, for not being there this morning. Thank you.
We did indicate to the Governor General that Jo Beth was sorry that she missed the meeting today as well. Communications by the President. I just want to say to all senators that in our discussions with the GG this morning, she did talk about love and what we were doing today in the Senate and the budget, and that she would be watching us very closely today. And obviously, there's a certain level of decorum that should be displayed in the upper chamber, and I would ask all senators to remember that. And also to remember that the rules will be top of the agenda as we go through this budget debate. So I ask you to respect the fact that there are persons out there who want to listen to the debate, and they want to understand what's really going on in the country, and they want to understand this budget. And we owe it to them to give them all that we have in a manner in which we all can live with. Messages from the Governor General. Messages from the House of Assembly. Laying of documents by ministers.
Madam President, there's one document that I crave leave to lay on the table of the Honorable Senate. It is the Prime Minister's Delivery Unit Annual Report. Once again, an accountable government, a reforming government, an achieving government.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents. Further laying of documents.
No further documents, Madam President.
Communications by ministers.
None.
Communications by senators. Questions.
None.
Answers to questions.
None.
Presentations of petitions.
None.
Appointment of select committees.
None.
Report of committees.
None.
First reading of bills.
None.
Second reading and committal of bills.
Thank you, Madam President.
Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Carl Bethel.
Yeah, these mechanical devices in there fall over sometimes. Okay. Yeah. Well, Madam President and fellow senators, let me say that we are approaching the independence celebrations, and that I start this debate really wishing to express great gratitude for those persons who struggled so hard to make the modern Bahamas, first in the struggle for majority rule, and secondly in the struggle for independence. The FNM at that time thought it was a little early, and that we weren't quite ready, and that we would have some issues that the nation wasn't ready quite to deal with. I think they were prescient in one or two areas. They were correct in one or two areas. But by and large, independence has been a blessing for the Bahamas. And we will continue in the God-given and enormous task of nation building. Create a better Bahamas for all Bahamians. And on that note, as part of this great struggle to continually improve the Bahamas, it is a great pleasure for me to move for the second reading and committal of a bill for an act for the appropriation of diverse sums of money going towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas on revenue account for the financial year commencing 1st July 2019 and ending on the 30th of June 2020. Madam President, we should all commend and congratulate the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance on the budget presentation and for the stellar management of the economy, which we as a government are assisting him in his performance. It is clear from all independent indicators that we are seeing important economic growth in real terms. That is growth over and above the rate of inflation for the first time in nearly a decade. 5 years of the last PRP administration were, unfortunately, an unmitigated fiscal, budgetary, and economic disaster for our country. Thankfully, well, it was 5 years of zero to no growth. That in itself is a disaster when one has a population rate of growth as high as that in the Bahamas. When every year there are 5,000 to 7,000 young people coming onto the job market. Growth rates of 0.1% or 0%, or negative growth rates of minus 3%, 4%, 5%, which was the legacy of the PLP. Was simply unacceptable and disastrous for our country. So it is clear that by all independent indicators, not the mouth of politicians, right? Not to say so. I hear someone over there saying so, but I everybody's eating. Well, yeah, those who are in their cars, those who are suffering in dire poverty, those who are under the grinding weight of unemployment, thousands and thousands of young people whose lives were blighted and whose hopes were lost under the PLP. Now that has all changed. Thankfully, with the passage of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, with the sound financial management and business-friendly policies of this government, we are now seeing a national economy that is truly gaining speed and taking off. Today we can boast of more than $8 billion in improved foreign direct investments, inclusive of 2 brand new cruise ports to be constructed. One in the city of Nassau, where the old dilapidated Welcome Center and the old dilapidated Customs House is just a total eyesore, are all going to be either demolished or totally reconfigured with a brand new, state-of-the-art, world-class international port that in and of itself will be a tourist destination that will provide, in and of itself, jobs for hundreds of Bahamians right there in the center of Nassau. Similarly, we see that with the cruise port that is being developed by Royal Caribbean Cruises in Freeport, Grand Bahama, a massive investment in an economy that has, for the last 10 years, been in dire straits. Together with the development of the port, the sale, which is now the sale of the hotel to private sector buyers, which is now closely and directly tied to the development of the Royal Caribbean Cruise Port in Freeport, we see the foundations for a rebirth, not just of the city of Freeport, but the entire island of Grand Bahama. And you know, the root of it was a simple act of courage. We had the courage to intervene, to break the economic, how should I say, the economic theories of the last 25 years, which called for the diminution of the role of the state in the economy. That was followed by the First England government. And further implemented by successive Perry Christie PLP administrations. And in fact, I always tell the story that in 2005, I, like John the Baptist, Madam President, I believe that you asked for a respectful attitude towards debate. I don't know if the leader officer want me to really dig into it. But you know what I mean. Yes, it was a political nostrum. You get out when you can get out, but you don't stay out when you must get in. And in 2005, I've often said this story, I was like John the Baptist in the wilderness, a lone voice calling for the then PLP government after the devastating hurricanes of Francis and Jean had caused the Princess Towers Hotel to be closed down right in the heart of Freeport. I said, this is the heart of Freeport. The government should intervene, buy this hotel, and get it open. All, left and right, poured scorn on me. Christie never said no. Frank Watson say you don't know what I had for breakfast, right? But I was the only person. I only say that to say this, that having seen the great harm caused to Freeport by the decision of the Christie government to stay out of the economy, to stay and turn, if you will, a Nelsonian blind eye, while the heart of that city rotted and fell to the ground, the contagion spreading to the pub on the mall, across the road, and spread straight through the International Bazaar, creating nothing but a wasteland in the heart of the nation's second city. This government had the courage, and I have to commend the most honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Hubert Minnis, for his courage to reverse the say we are not going to repeat the same stupid mistake twice. We will not allow the heart of Alukaya, which is really was like the backup generator for Freeport, since the heart was dead. We would not allow that to be repeated twice. And so now we see that with the Alukaya, the pending sale, it is now closely tied and has the involvement of the Royal Caribbean Group in that situation, which we hope will truly lay the foundation for a full-fledged economic rebirth of the island of Grand Bahama. And of course, we know also now we have the Lighthouse Point development by Disney Cruises Lines in South Eleuthera. And inasmuch as Freeport has been an economic disaster zone for the last 15 years, South Eleuthera for the last 25 years has been in economic devastation and perpetual recession. And in the Disney development, we see the potential for an economic rebirth of South Eleuthera, bringing it on par with the extensive hotel developments and resort developments that are enjoyed by the northern part of that island. And hopefully the foundation is being laid for sustainable economic growth and development for businesses, tour businesses, boat and pleasure craft services for Bahamians, as well as the provision of handicraft, stalls, stores, foods, etc. That also by introducing cruise visitors to the island, that those cruise visitors over time will be converted into stopover visitors who will come, and eventually into homeowners who will come. Again, adding layers of development. And that foundation is being laid by the sacrifice, the toil, the hard work, the blood, sweat, toil, and tears, and the vision of the Free National Movement government, that we will bring broad-based economic development to every island in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And that job is well on its way. Madam President, our government is not merely relying on foreign direct investment to spur our economic growth and development. We are also making significant investments in our young Bahamian entrepreneurs and small business owners through the Small Business Development Center. And in his budget communication, the Minister for Finance indicated that over 3,500 registrants were receiving training and roughly $1 million in grants had already been approved. This is important. It is important because it's necessary for development and economic opportunity to be broad-based throughout the society and to be particularly aimed at our Bahamian budding entrepreneurs and business persons. Because at the end of the day, the Bahamas must be for Bahamians, particularly young Bahamians. We and the future, the youth of the future and now must enjoy the first fruits of their own national economy, the first fruits. And so this is the goal, this is the aim of the government, to have broad-based, sustainable development. Following the old saying, don't give me a fish, teach me how to fish. That is what the Small Business Development Center is doing. It is teaching and fostering broad-based economic participation in all sectors of our economy, starting off with small businesses, which small businesses will become medium businesses, and properly disciplined, properly trained, will eventually become big businesses. And the best example of that is the Bahamas Striping Group of companies who started off with a grant from the Ingram administration. That's it. They started off with a mere $5,000 grant from the government led by the Right Honorable Hubert Alexander Ingram. And from that small grant, these visionary, hardworking gentlemen have developed a major group of companies providing specialized services and different forms of services. So they do striping and roadworks. They are now also doing a lot of construction work, etc. They were instrumental in finalizing and finishing through one of their associated companies, or most of the works, 99% of the works, on the Foxhill Community Center, which had been a work under construction for like maybe 30 years, or more since Lionel Davis first bought the land. And so that's the example that we point to of what is possible if Bahamians, and particularly young Bahamians, are only given a chance by their own government. And this government is giving Bahamians a chance. The Minister of Finance, in his budget communication, indicated that the spending forecast in this budget will be closely aligned to actual spending in the previous budget year. Hence, there have been some decreases in the amounts allocated broadly to certain heads of expenditure, which falls loosely under the oversight of the Office of the Attorney General. Briefly, the present budget allocates a minor increase in the budget for the Office of the Attorney General from $18.4 million to just over $19 million. The Supreme Court allocation has decreased by nearly $700,000 in line with their actual spending last year. Provisions, however, have been made elsewhere in the budget for the recommended increases in judicial salaries and emoluments that were recently made in the report by the committee headed by retired Justice Claire Hepburn. The Court of Appeals budget has been reduced by roughly $100,000 in line with last year's expenditure. The budget of the Registrar General's office has been increased by about $100,000 in line with present needs. The Industrial Tribunal's allocation is unchanged at $1.5 million. Let me say that these allocations are reflective of last year's expenditure. However, I have received the commitment of the Minister of Finance that the administration of justice will not be allowed to suffer, and that any and all justifiable adjustments if required, will be made. I thought I might just speak briefly about some of the issues that the Attorney General's office is dealing with. One of them is the Financial Action Task Force, and of course there are other global issues that affect our financial services sector. Now, the financial services sector is extremely important to the Bahamian economy. It provides much needed foreign investment in terms of foreign currency inflows into the economy. It provides many well-paying, in some cases very high-paying, middle-class and upper-middle-class jobs for Bahamians, particularly females in our society. It is a vital part of our economy, and it is much stressed and much assailed by the world under every form of pretext. There are underlying some of these initiatives competitive concerns that the world has decided that they want to have to compete against small little countries like the Bahamas. So they're making it very difficult. Competition is not necessarily a part of the Financial Action Task Force issue or concern. Its concern is to do with anti-money laundering and terrorism. And these concerns have intensified of late, particularly in view of recent acts of terror spawned by the ISIL or ISIS movement, which for a period of time, since about 2008 until recently, in fact had its own so-called caliphate, from which it spewed forth propaganda and rhetoric and gave instructions on how to commit terrorist acts. And so we saw that during the demise of the caliphate, as the world focused on its extermination as a geographical entity, not of the people, but of the entity, the political entity, the so-called state, that they were able to spawn terrorist attacks, lone wolf attacks, some coordinated attacks as well, where a number of persons were coordinated in trying to carry off terrorist acts in mainland European countries. We saw the bombing at Schiphol Airport. We saw truck attacks, etc. And recently in Sri Lanka, to our horror, on Easter Sunday, we saw the most vicious and horrific terrorist attack that was ISIS-inspired, if not actually ISIS-assisted. And that, the extent to which there was direct assistance is still being determined, but certainly we see the problem with ISIS-inspired terrorism. So this is really the concern of the FATF, terrorism, money laundering offenses, because money laundering involves making crime profitable. If you can launder your money and make it look like it came from a clean source, then you have successfully committed a crime. You've committed a crime in order to raise the money, and you've committed another crime to clean it up. And then you get to live off it. And so it is the attack against both of these elements, money laundering and financing of terrorism, with some additions like anti-proliferation, that motivate the Financial Action Task Force. I last week attended the plenary of the Financial Action Task Force, which was held in Orlando, Florida. This is the final plenary before we get to that period of September 2019, when our action plan, which was imposed on us in 2017, will come to an end. Now, if I may explain and remind Bahamian people, it was scarce 2 weeks after we came to office that we were informed that the Bahamas was going to be placed into something called the International Cooperation Review Group, ICRG, for enhanced follow-up, that we'd be required to make changes to our laws, and that the likelihood is that we would be placed in an action plan by the FATF. In other words, placed on their grey list. It was 2 weeks after we came to office. There had been a Caribbean Financial Action Task Force mutual evaluation of the Bahamas conducted in the year 2015. In December, that MER, Mutual Evaluation Report, was completed. The former government knew that there were identified deficiencies in our technical compliance with the FATF 40 recommendations. In other words, there were serious gaps in our law. Our laws had fallen behind the times. Because our laws had fallen behind the times, the capacity of our regulators was significantly compromised because the regulators didn't have the power to deal with the most modern manifestations and forms in which money was being laundered and terrorists were being financed. But having regard to the size of our financial sector, in the view of the Financial Action Task Force, what poses a threat to the world, Madam President, and to the world economy. So the Bahamas, the scarce 2 weeks after we came into office, was placed into this gray list situation. The latest statement on the Bahamas is to this effect, and this was issued on the 21st of June 2019 at the conclusion of the FATF plenary. The Bahamas has taken steps towards improving its anti-money laundering, counter-financing terrorism regime, including by beginning its initial implementation of the recent beneficial ownership law, bringing the anti-terrorism regulations into force. The Bahamas should continue to work on implementing its action plan to address its strategic deficiencies, including 1, by completing the comprehensive electronic case management system for international cooperation. That has been completed. 2, demonstrating risk-based supervision for non-bank financial institutions. That has been ongoing for the past year and is demonstrated and demonstratable, easily demonstratable. 3, completing the process to ensure the timely access to adequate, accurate, and current basic and beneficial ownership information. We have recently purchased a software package from the BDO International Group, software that was developed in the British Virgin Islands and has been in place for the last 2.5 to 3 years. And the process of onboarding of financial institutions, major law firms, and we trust between now and the end of August, medium-sized law firms, and commencing in September, smaller 2 and 3 person law firms will be implemented. So that, yes, there's more work to do to bring the beneficial ownership registration system online, but by the end of August, all major banks, financial institutions, financial and corporate services providers, the big entities that hold, you go in there, they're not law firms, they're FCSPs, they're called. You go in there, they got banks and banks of filing cabinets with all kinds of company files in them, hundreds if not thousands of them that are maintained every year by updating the annual returns or the annual statements and paying the annual license fees, etc., to the Registrar General's office. But all of these persons will have to upload into a cloud-based system their information, not on finances, but on beneficial owners of these companies, so that it provides a secure search platform. I assure the industry that we've had numerous consultations with leading law firms, banks, and financial and corporate services providers. We've had numerous consultations, and it is a system that is embraced and fully operational in the British Virgin Islands, and it is, quite frankly, the way in which the world is going. I can only tell you that beneficial ownership information has now become a matter of top priority for the international community. The bug has caught on. And you'd see that just a few days ago, I think just Friday, if I'm not mistaken, an announcement went out from the Crown Dependencies Jersey, Guernsey, Sark, and the Isle of Man. These were the ones who, when the British Parliament passed a law requiring the overseas territories, that would be the small Caribbean island set that is still under Britain, Cayman Islands, British Virgin Islands, etc., and Bermuda particularly, ordering them to have publicly open registers of beneficial ownership. They said 2021, I think they pushed it back to 2022 or 2023. And the point was made by, particularly by the Cayman Islands, well, you've given us an order, what about your dependencies right off your shore? You can't send anything to them? And the answer from the British government was, well, Parliament can't do it because they are directly under the Crown. Well, someone did it because Jersey, Guernsey, Sark, and the Isles of Man issued a statement that they are going to have publicly available registers of beneficial ownership by 2023 at the latest. So this is absolutely necessary, and the system that we have in place, or that we are putting in place, and which we have to have in place by September, if we're going to have any reasonable prospect of getting out of this ICRG grey list situation, is working and is broadly accepted by the private sector in the British Virgin Islands, and all of the overseas territories have systems of beneficial ownership registration in place. We just chose the best way to do it with the best software, and that's what we're doing. So I urge our participants in the industry to embrace this opportunity to, in a least harmful way, answer this growing demand for ready access. And hopefully, once we can show that law enforcement agencies have ready access to this information and can provide it to any lawful inquiry, that will mitigate the claims for public access to the general public. The fourth thing was for us to continue to increase the quality of the financial intelligence unit's products to assist law enforcement agencies in the pursuit of money laundering and terrorist financing investigations, especially complex investigations and standalone investigations. Well, I'm happy to say that we, since the 1st of June, have fully installed and implemented a totally new software system for the financial intelligence unit that is tied with a package of analytical software. This new unit and communications methodology allows for banks to electronically file suspicious transactions reports, so they no longer have to send paper all around with messages. They can do it on the computer. They will get an answer from FIU right away. There will be the ability for them to communicate, to get further information electronically, etc. And so that aspect is clear. Further, the system is now directly hooked up with the police and the customs and the AG's office in terms of law enforcement interactivity. So the FIU can speak in real time on a secure network to the police, customs, Office of the Attorney General, and with the analytical software, they are now beginning to process all of the historic backlog SDRs, as well as all new and incoming SDRs. So the Financial Intelligence Unit is well on its way to addressing the deficiencies that were noted in 2015 and confirmed in 2017. We have to demonstrate that the authorities are investigating and prosecuting all types of money laundering. We are doing that. The amounts of money laundering cases have increased exponentially. And then we had to show that the Office of the Attorney General had to develop a case management system that gave prompts, that could print reports, that would allow us to better track the process and the deliverables, if you will, in all international cooperation cases. I'm pleased to announce that as of June, the beginning of this month, we have a fully operational case management system. I'm going to brag a little bit. Remember, I started off by saying how important it is for the Bahamas government to foster the business development of young Bahamians. I can tell you now that in the Department of Information Technology, there's a young man, a young Bahamian, who wrote a program using Microsoft SharePoint that fully answers every single requirement. A young Bahamian named Anthony Roll. And I commend him. So good is his product. I don't think it's Brucey's son, but he has an illustrious name. He has an illustrious name, Anthony Rule. And if he is Anthony Rule and the son of Anthony Brucey Rule, that would be something. But I don't think that's the point. He's not the son, as far as I'm aware. And what is most important is whatever family he's from, he's a Bahamian who has shown brilliance. Brilliance. He took a general Microsoft offering and was able to write the codes that allowed that system to be manipulated, and it's an open share program, so this is possible. And he wrote a whole case management program. Now, the point I'm making is I'm not just saying that it is serviceable, that it is user-friendly, that it is world class. There was a young lady, middle-aged lady, from UNDC, the United Nations Development, whatever. I don't know, it doesn't, Development Corporation or something. UNDC. She attended FATF, Financial Action Task Force training exercise that the Securities Commission and my office organized 2 weeks ago here in the Bahamas. We brought the Financial Action Task Force Global Trainers Training Institute, which is in South Korea. We paid for them to come to the Bahamas, and we invited all of our Caribbean regions, and 9 countries showed up, us making the 10th. 9 jurisdictions and countries showed up, us making the 10th. We had Haiti, Barbados, Jamaica, all of the Crown overseas territories were all represented. Trinidad and Tobago as well. And anyway, she asked my staff, she asked me first, and then my staff, and I gave permission, to view the system, because she said in Asia, throughout Southeast Asia, and throughout Africa, and in other countries in sort of the developing parts of Eastern Europe, there was a need for the same software, and they were facing the same problems that we had, which was that we couldn't find a commercial software that was capable of doing what we needed done. And she wanted to see what we had. I didn't get a report from her when she was announced there, but when I went to the FATF, she was right there as an accredited representative at the FATF, UNDC, and she came up to me, she said, listen, I saw it, and I must tell you, it is brilliant. It's a brilliant system. It's workable, it's user-friendly. I said, well, you know, if you all need for Mr. Rule to come and visit any countries to help them out, we'll make him available if he wishes to go for a short time. We need him back here. So I would really like to commend that young man and the DIT, Ms. Carol Roach, for the enormous assistance that they have offered to the Office of the Attorney General. You really have reaffirmed my confidence that in the Bahamas, we Bahamians could do whatever we set our mind to, and do it well, and do it up to world-class standards. The other issue where we have some international pressure, and this one is more competitive in my mind than anything else, is this base erosion and profit shifting initiative of the European Union called BEPS. And, that's the one that says you have to treat offshore and onshore companies the same, that you cannot allocate profits internationally to entities in your country, so their owners can't allocate profits to a low or no tax jurisdiction if they don't actually do the work in your country. And that is really about tax competition, if you will. It's about ensuring that taxes are not artificially shifted to mere corporate vehicles in other countries to avoid the taxes that are payable in the home jurisdiction where your work is actually being performed. Well, you'll recall, Senators, that between December 2018 and 2019, we passed a suite of bills intending to comply with the OECD and European Union's base erosion and profit shifting project. Bear in mind, it's not only the Europeans, it is all of the G20 nations, all of the richest and most powerful nations operating through the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development who have pushed this BEPS initiative. So, you know, there's no possibility of saying, no man, we ain't gonna change, we're gonna stay where we are. It just ain't happening. Okay, they'll cut you off from the financial sector in a moment. And then you would have a cash-based economy and no ability to import food and necessities and oil and all the things we need to survive. So there was no possibility of saying no. So we passed these laws. Now, in order to fully comply with what is now the law of the Bahamas, which is the substance bill, we recall also that associated with the substance bill, the economic substance bill, was a bill called the removal of preferential exemptions. Those preferential exemptions are those things that kept the offshore sector separate from the Bahamian economy. Well, now there is no offshore sector. There is no offshore sector in legal terms. All IBCs must be treated like Bahamian companies, and Bahamian companies have the benefits of being IBCs, so they're all the same now. And in due course, we probably will come with a Unified Companies Act that would be in divisions that would allow for certain flexibilities to bring the flexibility of incorporation in the IBC regime over to Bahamian domestic company regimes, create a new hybrid company that will have the benefits of both and less of the bureaucracy of any of them. So we'll have a very flexible and ease of setting up companies and managing them will be enhanced by this process. But that's going forward. Right now, the question that we have to deal with in this budget is what taxes and what tax scenario do we apply that will, on the one hand, comply with the requirement that there be no special preferential regime, no ring fencing, but also at the same time not do undue harm to a very price-sensitive industry. And so a lot of the bills in this budget are targeted at bringing in the legal reforms necessary to eliminate ring fencing and to have one unified system of taxation across the board. So the particular acts that will be affected will be the Stamp Act and the VAT Act and the Business License Act. And of course, it will also apply to the Banks and Trust Companies Regulation Act. And I'll explain in as quickly as I can right now what these are about. But let me first, before I go there, speak now to some of the associated entities in our budget that are under the aegis, or under the wing, if you will, of the Office of the Attorney General. So we're looking at the Council of Legal Education, the Eugene Depute Law School, which was established in 1998. It is the third of 3 regional law schools. It is operated by the Council of Legal Education at the University of the West Indies. It offers the LEC degree program, Legal Education Certificate Program, to persons, and once they get the LEC, they're entitled to be admitted to the Bahamas Bar and to the bar of any other Caribbean Commonwealth country, subject, of course, to their own national laws. The LEC program is a 2-year program for qualified persons holding a Bachelor of Laws degrees, LLB. The qualified attorneys at law from certain other Commonwealth jurisdictions may complete a 6-month transition course in order to qualify for the LEC. The law school has 16 full-time academic and administrative staff. The judges and private sector attorneys also serve as adjunct instructors or professors. The school has graduated over 500 students, more than 90% of whom are Bahamians. The great difficulty that the school has encountered from its inception was that although it is a regional law school, it has been unable to attract significant numbers of regional students. And so traditionally, more than 94 to 95% of its students have been Bahamians. Now, that has been a very valuable thing for many Bahamians, particularly as a change of life Bahamians, persons who are moving towards retirement in their initial chosen fields of employment, who were able to benefit from legal education and legal training, and who then have gone on to become successful lawyers late in life. It has been a blessing for the public service in many areas. Many of our armed forces, police and defense force officers have received legal training and gone on to become successful, dynamic prosecutors and litigators, mostly starting in the AG's office, but then moving often into the private sector, some into the magistracy, some into the judiciary. So it has been an overall benefit for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and for the ability of Bahamians. And see, it must be borne in mind that the Bahamas is not a country where wealth is very well spread out. And Bahamians, through the public service, have from day one, as part of the majority rule movement, been afforded educational opportunities while in the course of rendering public service and with the assistance of the public service. Thousands and scores of thousands of Bahamians have benefited from this humanistic and forward-looking policy that came in with majority rule, and this is something that continues now. And yes, even in legal education. Right now, there are only 34 students enrolled for this year. And so while that gives, in terms of their fees, they make a portion of their needs, roughly, I'd say, 15 to 20% of their financial needs come from tuition fees. That leaves the 80% to be funded by the government. And so we are urging the EDLS, the Eugene Dupuis Law School, to really look towards increasing the amount of non-Bahamian participation in its studies, increasing the amount of students that they serve, and trying to get it to at least 50, and try and have a higher representation from the region, because then they will be paying additional tuition, which will add to their allocation and to their ability to fund their operations. Certainly when the University of the Bahamas eventually builds its dorms, that will probably be the best time to work some form of agreement out that would allow non-Bahamian Caribbean students who attend EDLS to also share in those dormitory facilities. This would greatly reduce the cost of living, bearing in mind that most of those countries don't have the US dollar peg in the Caribbean, and so coming to the Bahamas is extremely expensive for them. So if we can hurry up and get those dorms built, I think it would greatly assist the Eugene Dupuis Law School in attracting more non-Bahamians to come to the Bahamas for legal education. And the Registrar General's office is also very critical, and I just wish to announce and confirm that Ms. Sally-Ann Pratt, Ms. Elise Sally-Ann Pratt, was recently appointed, Ms. Elise Sally-Ann Lockhart Pratt, was recently appointed to the post of Acting Registrar General, and in due course she will be confirmed, and she has already commenced a very dynamic process of reform and reorganization in the Registrar General's office. I'm also pleased to announce that Miss Marva Moxie, daughter of the late, great Edmund Spencer Moxie, a man whose contribution to this country stands in the front rank. His contribution was to the minds of Bahamians. Be proud of who you are. Be proud of where you came from. Be proud of how you live. And to set up a whole center over the hill and to see it as a tourist draw. Only now, after his dream was crushed by the PRP, is the FNM giving life to his dream and has memorialized him by naming the park after him. And his daughter was recently appointed as the Assistant Registrar in the Grand Bahama Office of the Registrar General. Work continues at the Office of the Registrar General to seek to reform the digital services that are offered for e-filing. The system that was in place, that my predecessor in office put in place, has numerous deficiencies, crashes all too often, and is not serviceable and is totally disrespected by the business community. We are absolutely frustrated with the operations of the Registrar General's Department. So we are in the process of acquiring a new digital platform. We have a company called Back Informatics from the Cayman Islands that we've engaged to create a proper, working, serviceable digital e-filing platform that will be able to accommodate all of the historic company filings from the dawn of time to now, and not crash the way the present system is doing. And the present system does not, it means that any company formed before 2015, you still have to go and pay money over the counter. So it was totally an impractical service that the former government put in place. We are thoroughly reworking it, and the company chosen, Back Informatics, is the company that has already implemented a world-class e-filing system in the Cayman Islands. And so we are seeking to replicate that. So in due course, we'll be able to announce, we believe, further significant improvements in the operations of the Registrar General's office. The bills that are presently before this House, Madam President, and I'll just go through briefly. The Customs Management Amendment Bill. The Customs Department will introduce their electronic single window, hopefully this year, to modernize their operations and to encourage faster and more efficient processing of imports, exports, and other border crossing related reports. You know, in Africa, they're having tremendous problems now with the speed with which, or the lack of speed with which containers are being processed. And so hopefully this and some focused attention from the Customs Department in the Marsh Harbor area will greatly assist in blocking whatever the log jams are. The Excise Amendments Bill seeks to effect amendments to both the first and second schedules of this Act. You know, these amendments will most notably be to harmonize a reduction in the duty on new and hybrid vehicles to a value not exceeding $50,000 to a low rate of 10%. And this is for electric and hybrid vehicles. And it's hoped that this will further assist in a cleaner Bahamas as more and more hybrid vehicles are used by more and more people, thus reducing the need for purchases of gasoline and reducing emissions. There's also been the measure that has been implemented by this bill, which is to encourage the purchase of vehicles which have a lower impact on the environment by reducing duty on new motor vehicles with a cylinder capacity above 1,500 centimeters, but not exceeding 2,000 cc, and not being valued at more than $50,000. And that duty has been dropped from 65% to 45%. This bill will also facilitate the duty-free exemptions and concessions granted to persons in the Economic Empowerment Zones Act 2018, which, as you know, is limited right now to the old traditional over-the-hill area. The Tariff Amendment Bill seeks to make numerous amendments to the Schedule of the Tariff Act. Essentially, this is the continuation of the process of harmonizing the system codes developed by the World Customs Organization. And there are numerous provisions that is seeking to bring consistency in the coding. It also seeks to lower various duty rates, most notably the duty on school supply, musical instruments, baby bottle liners, and household stores and refrigerators, of width not exceeding 30 inches. And they've all been reduced to 3. Now that's important because the smaller fridges and the smaller stores are those that are purchased by less well-off persons, and they will now be able to get these, and particularly a fridge, free of duty. That is truly a blessing. The bill also is seeking to reduce the duty on household furniture from 45% now to 25%. To provide duty-free imports of Junkanoo materials and duty-free import of boat trailers for commercial fishermen, and once again to create new tariff codes to facilitate the economic empowerment zones that has been created over the hill. Now, the Financial Administration Audit Amendment Act, it seeks to do several things. It seeks to amend Section 191 of the Principal Act to change the provision from a requirement that all taxes be paid on companies with similar shareholdings where a company applies for a tax compliance certificate to a discretionary power of the Financial Secretary to require evidence of tax compliance of other companies and businesses with similar shareholdings or ownership before he issues a tax compliant certificate, but only where there's reason to believe that the company or businesses with similar ownership was established to evade the payment of taxes. In other words, where you have groups of companies, one company can apply and get the tax compliance certificate. The only basis on which it can be refused, and they can get the TCC in respect of all of the companies in the group. The only basis on which the Financial Secretary can intervene and stop that is if there's reasonable ground to believe that the company applying or any other company in that group was established solely for the purpose of evading the payment of business license fees. And so the idea is to encourage the group, where necessary, activities, not to be a disincentive, to allow people to organize their affairs so long as the tax is paid properly on the activities of the group. One company can apply. Now, there will also be a new system imposed by Section 35A. What happened is the former government had set up a revenue enhancement unit, but there was no statutory basis for its operations. And its job was to go around and to ensure that, and to conduct investigations to ensure, for example, that people weren't accessing the locked customs containers in the middle of the night to remove dutiable items, that they weren't paying anybody off for this or that, to see that people were lying about their real property taxes or their business licenses, to go and do spot checks, etc. And it did not have any statutory authority to act. And so what we are seeking to do in Section 35A is to give the statutory authority to the Financial Secretary and the Minister particularly. The Minister will be able to assign public officers from any public agency, whether it's customs or perhaps an investigating agency, and bring them into something to be called the Revenue Enhancement Unit. And the Financial Secretary will have the management and administrative control over such persons who are engaged, and all agencies required for responsible for the collection of government revenue will have to report to the financial secretary within 21 days on the status or outcomes of any actual information that it has received. So if Customs receives some information of a likely scenario that might be causing a breach or loss of revenue, they have to report to the financial secretary, who will then refer it to the Revenue Enhancement Unit so they can be properly investigated. And every person required to serve will, and no person who may be their superior is entitled to override the determination of the minister as to the deployment of persons. Now, the banks and trusts, pardon me. This is the last bit I'll speak about because this is the one that really speaks, I think. There's a whole list of them in here, but this one speaks to the change that has to be made to treat formerly offshore banks the same for the purposes of taxation as domestic banks. Domestic banks would have paid business license fees. That has all been changed now. And there will now be what is called a domestically systemic levy fee paid through the Banks and Trust Companies Regulation Amendment Bill. It will set up a system where the amount paid every year will be reflective of the systemic risk posed by the institution to the domestic financial system, and particularly to the public purse. Let me explain what I mean. If we look at the situation with the Bank of the Bahamas, and it had historic bad loans and apparently bad lending practices or bad policies imposed on it that affected its lending practices in a negative way. So the history of Bank of the Bahamas as a government-controlled entity is like every other SOE, state-owned enterprise. It was driven into the ground by bad policy decisions. The consequence of the distress, essentially the consequence of the distress which affected, let us not have a debate on it here, okay? Let us not, okay? The consequence of it is that the central bank imposed certain requirements under threat that it would be taken out and struck off as a bank. They even started an action, God may not really start action trying to forestall it. Just as we came to office. The fact was, though, that in order to stabilize the Bank of the Bahamas and meet the requirements of the central bank, first the PLP put in about 140. We had to take it up to $270 million. $270 million out of taxpayers' pockets. It's unsaleable in its present condition, but it is on the road to recovery. But it was an enormous imposition. Think of when CLICO crashed in 2008, 2009, and the enormous amount of expenditure that the government had to take on to actually begin to pay people's policies without getting a nickel back from CLICO. So the systemic risk allocation will, the levy will be based on what risk the institution poses to the Bahamian payment system, the Bahamian economy. Because at the end of the day, if you're too big to fail, the government ought to borrow $200, $300, $400 million to stop you failing. That is really what has happened with Bank of the Bahamas. But fortunately, as I say, Bank of the Bahamas is on the rebound. But this new system, which came from Australia actually, and in one or two other countries, we adapted it, is something that allows for the formerly offshore banks to pay a systemic levy that is tied in with their risk to the Bahamian payment system. So if they have Bahamian accounts, if they have Bahamian dollar bank, if they offer banking services to the Bahamians, then their risk level to the Bahamian economy will go higher. If they stay basically only offering services outside of the Bahamas, they still pose a risk because they could fail. So the extent to which they pose a risk means that they will pay a levy on that exposure. And so roughly to this year, the amounts paid by both formerly domestic and formerly foreign banks will stay about the same. Madam President, my speech here has long references to all of the enactments, and so they're there. Anybody who wishes to see them, they'll post it on the AG's website or something. And I really don't want to belabor the listening audience or my fellow senators with too many details. Suffice it to say, as I conclude, this is an excellent budget. This is an excellent budget. The outturns from last year showed that for the first time in many years, we got a positive growth in public revenue of over $200 million. And we managed, with that $200 million, on the way to that money there, we cut the recurrent deficit by more than half to $192 million. So this is an excellent budget. It reflects excellent financial outturns, even with the loss of significant revenue from the gaming houses because of the endless lawsuits, the threats to lawsuits. By the way, we have a framework now, and anyone who wants to make a cottage industry from lawsuits challenging the laws that we will pass to reflect the agreement we have with the major gaming houses, which are going to pass in July. Anyone who wants to have go start a lawsuit, pay your tax. That's what the law says. Pay your tax. When we have a settled law, you can sue all you want. Just pay your tax, and if the courts say we owe you something, we'll settle it up after. The law, I'm not threatening it, the law requires, where there's a settled tax law, that if anybody wishes to challenge it, they must pay their tax pending, that is in the law. That is the law of the Bahamas. So it's not a threat for me to say what the law is. If some lawyers want to make a cottage industry of suing, no problem. If the court supports you, and this is what I said, if the court supports you, the government will do whatever the court says. But the law of the Bahamas is clear on this matter. If there is a settled law passed and you have a dispute with it, you are entitled to sue, but you must pay and comply with the law until a court says otherwise. On that note, no, we agreed because the law was not settled. The law was not settled, okay? And but that was the state of play. But they had to agree that they had to pay the 11%, which was the previous law, again, under existing Bahamian laws. So, Madam President, on those notes, I say once again, I commend to all senators this wonderful budget, this budget of hope, this budget of achievement, this budget that, God willing, and barring any unforeseen circumstances, will continue the bold and visionary policies of this government to make a better and more accountable government for the benefit of every Bahamian. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bethel. Is there a second?
Did you say so much in 10 minutes?
Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Dr. Mildred Hall Watson.
Good morning, Madam President, fellow senators, Bahamians all.
Yes, ma'am.
I must first give honor to God for the privilege of being a member of this chamber. And despite many recent personal challenges, God has kept us. I am grateful not only to be in this chamber, but also in this country. As we look around and see the chaos that is in our world today, truly, we live in paradise. As an appointed member of this chamber, I would like to again thank the Most Honorable Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis for the appointment to this honorable chamber. You should. And ask God's continuous favor and richest blessings on him, his cabinet, and all parliamentary colleagues, inclusive, Madam President, of the members of the opposition, whose presence truly attests to our democratic system. Madam President, I stand to second this outstanding document, the budget for fiscal year 2019-2020, that our leader in this place has so eloquently outlined in his presentation, very technical though it was. I would also like to congratulate the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance and his team for the remarkable job they did with the people's money over the last fiscal year, with an even more diverse and people-friendly budget for fiscal year 2019-2020. A budget that is progressive, expressive, and people-oriented. Madam President and Senate colleagues, before I give direct comments on the budget communication, I would like to speak to a few issues that have arisen during the course of this debate. In that other place last week, a member of our caucus, in his contribution in that other place, decided to attempt to demean, disrespect, and embarrass the government. Sadly, this worked out with him ending up pointing that finger back at himself. Not only did he shame himself, but unwittingly shamed many who remain pastors in their pulpit and makes the effort to share and spread the teaching of love as taught by the Christ. Differences and opinions should not be unexpected. Debate should be vigorous, but always respectful, not jiving and rhyming. Be a man and step away if you totally disagree with the entire governing party's policies. Your attempt to embarrass the government did not work. You isolated yourself and deceived the residents of Pine Ridge, who elected you with F&M votes, and embarrassed yourself. Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House of Representatives, once said, "Diversity is your strength, but unity is your power." We will not allow our power to be diluted by others for their own personal ambitions. It is the people's time, and in time, the people of Pine Ridge will deal with it. The major tenet of this individual's profession is to teach love to one another. Instead, comments were made in a negative manner about skin color, name recognition as a negative, and that truly is unfortunate. One of the comments made during that debate, I will not discuss here anymore. But I will say that each individual is responsible for their own comments, their own attitudes, their own behavior. There was a lot of discussion about how much time the Minister of Finance took in giving his contribution. But I think it is important to know that when questions are asked, then it is important that questions are answered. There are a few comments I would like to make on some individuals in our country, Madam President. Life at times throws curveballs, and recently, life threw a significant amount of curveballs to two Bahamian families. These are the families of Alde Ramsey and Blair John, two men at the pinnacle of their career and academic lives. They were found deceased in Italy several weeks ago, and it is impossible to come to terms with these losses, as Blair John's mom stated last week. Knowing that my daughter too was traveling for additional training abroad, I could never wrap my mind around the fact that when she returned, it would be for me to receive a box, as these relatives did a few days ago. Therefore, it was a heavy heart that we offer sincere condolences to these families, and may they know that the Bahamas mourns with them. And it is also unfortunate that, to my knowledge, information has been received by us that their drowning was simply an accident. Fully clothed, ability to swim, and they're both found dead in a river by accident. However, I would also like to mention the untimely death of a young Bahamian in the music world, affectionately known as MDs, Marisha Walker, who lost his life 2 nights ago. You're correct, sorry. Devon Knight, my apologies. And again, our condolences to his family. However, Madam President, there's always the other side of the coin. There was a young lady in England by the name of Gabrielle Turnquest, 18 years old, Bahamian, who for the very first time has gone before the Honorable Society of Lincoln's Inn Bar in England and was called to the bar at the tender age of 18. In concert with this, we must also celebrate the achievements of another young Bahamian who attended St. Leo University in Tampa, Florida, Randonique Coakley, not only graduating summa cum laude with a double major in economics and accounting, she, during her college years, was successful in passing all 4 of her CPA exams as she graduated from college. The dean of her school was in shock, having to state that this is the first time this has happened in the university, a Bahamian. And so she goes on to do graduate studies at North Carolina State. So we send her and her parents stellar congratulations, as we also do to our new lawyer. One other thing I would like to make mention of is what happened in our country last week that was very troubling for me. One member of our caucus made a mistake in pronouncing a figure, a monetary figure. Our nation took to social media and attempted to vilify her mercilessly about pronunciation mistakes. This seemed unduly harsh, and I trust that when we hear about abusers and child molesters, we see the same type of outrage that occurred over a pronunciation mistake. where is the charity in the hearts of our people? However, all is not lost, as many of our parliamentary colleagues stepped in with words of encouragement. And I'd also like to commend Mrs. Patricia Minnis, the wife of our most honorable Prime Minister, for publicly and spontaneously fully defending the honorable member when asked by the press for her thoughts. Finally, I would like to say congratulations to the two newest members of the judiciary, Chief Justice Mr. Brian Murray and Justice Ruth O'Donnell. Now, as we begin the discussion of the debate, I would like to preempt it by simply saying, in 2 Timothy, we're told, lay out the truth plain and simple in doing your best for God and his people. Hebrew 11 tells us God really, R-A-R-E-L-Y, calls someone to do something that is easy. And finally, Joshua 1:9 says, be strong and courageous. Be very courageous and not afraid, for the Lord thy God is with thee wherever thou goest. And I preempt that because it took courage, strength, and a belief in the presence and support of the Holy Spirit for this budget to be put together as it was. As we look at the debates that we have at each level of Parliament, the budget debate tends to be one of the most contentious because, in truth, it is one of the most important. Many laws may be passed and many are broken, but life goes on. The budget, however, is sacrosanct. It must be passed. No budget, no money, no services, no law enforcement, no health care, no schools. And so we must pay very close attention to what this caring government has put into this caring budget. The budget of the fiscal year 2019-2020 is based on a government's personal commitment to improve the life of all Bahamians, no matter where they reside in the Bahamas. That is the underpinning motivations of the choices made in the document. In 2018, the Fiscal Responsibility Act actually came into being, and it is the foundation from a legal perspective that the budget is developed. In 2 years of stable and steady governance, this current government has moved from economic stagnation to positive growth of 1.6 in the last fiscal year. The question is it enough? Or even, is it what was predicted? Maybe it wasn't. The next question is, though, was it better? And the answer is a resounding yes. Delivering our government for good governance, we supported it by operating under tight fiscal restraints while still increasing direct social assistance by greater than $600,000. Currently, we created new initiatives for education, economic empowerment, and entrepreneurship. Despite the fact that there is criticism of the attention given to fiscal reform, this caring government is very appreciative of the fact that the government's money is truly the people's money, and the collection of it must be used responsibly on the people's behalf for programs and services. Quick fixes with no lasting sustainable results are not only doomed to fail, but they compromise the future of generations yet unborn. We cannot continue the practices of improper budgeting, reckless spending, which results only in the inability of a changing fiscal stability and sustained economic growth. The government is therefore steadfast in its communication in the face of personal and collective criticism to persist with a properly structured economic and fiscally stable agenda. Madam President, during the presentation by the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, the opposition continued to emphasize that the statement was made as no new tax categories, including no increase in value-added tax. And the minister meant what he said. However, he was also very clear that the government intended to increase the efficiency in collecting taxes and increasing compliance in a fair and transparent way. Removal of budgeted items that were no longer relevant to a ministry, including salaries that were no longer being paid. And when 30% of the country's expenditure is related to personal emoluments, correcting this issue allows allotment of these funds to other areas in need. It is important to note that no current working individuals had any reductions in salaries, as the majority of agencies were spending in reality an average of 70% of their budgets. So what may appear to be a budget reduction is only removal from the system of legacy budgeting. In working towards the removal of this system of legacy budgeting, the government, your minister-led caring government, can deliver more services with increased productivity and efficiency. We cannot ever overstate the tenets of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, because this act allows facilitation of the government's agenda of transparency, accountability, and responsibility in this budget exercise. One of the most forward-looking aspects of this is that all future governments are held to the standard of demonstrating in a clear and transparent way how government funds are collected and how they are spent. I am sure in areas of need there can be amendments, but not to weaken the act. And Bahamians are now savvy enough to see through any hanky-panky which might be practiced. The Fiscal Responsibility Council, which is an important component of the Act, is comprised of individuals nominated from civil society and professional organizations. And through the independent mandate of this council, allows access to all government information, access to public servants, direct submissions to Parliament, with no intervention by any public official or elected officials. Taxpayers and all Bahamians will have the opportunity to see how their tax dollars are being spent. Madam President, one of the interesting things about this process, the members of the loyal opposition have offered comments on record of the well-received comments from citizens. However, based on the presentation from some of their members, it seems that they are trying to discredit the act itself. Because of the manner in which this act makes the government be accountable. I do not think that we should have these kinds of headlines again. Headlines that say the answers made by journalists and members of the wider public are often met with stony, arrogant resistance. The Nassau Guardian, December 21st, 2015. The public was promised an understandable, simplified, and accessible budget document. The public got what was promised. A part of this process this government has done is increase the budget of the Auditor General by $500,000. Budget that will ensure that they're able to acquire audit tools, allowing it to fulfill its mandate as an independent auditor, strengthening the government's fiscal management performance, upgrading its institutional capacity, and economic performance. This was facilitated through the Inter-American Development Bank Reform Project. An important aspect of transparency and accountability is the publication of an annual report listing all government contracts awarded throughout the year, when all components and new legislations are enacted. No mysterious individual or firm will receive $1 million contract that may or may not be uncovered for years. So the promised accountability and transparency under the various components of the reform project will be a promise made, promise kept. Under the current budget, some item classifications have also been changed and placed in the budget document annexes. So I say to all Bahamians, because of this shift, please do not make unfounded accusations about items being removed from the budget without checking the annexes of this progressive government. It has been developed and is simply following world standards for public budgeting by a program and agency. This is a work in process, Madam President. However, it will continue to be expanded over time. State-owned enterprises, as per the budget, will receive $398.3 million of the people's money, which represent 15% of the recurrent expenditure. And the question that must be asked, is this sustainable? Difficult decisions must be made in looking at duplication of programs, which can allow items to be consolidated across public corporations, boards, and agencies. Although difficult decisions cannot be made based on what may be politically comfortable, they must be made on what is best for us now and most important for future generations. Many of these changes may seem to cause pain now, but will create stability and sustainability in the future. The wheels of the public service turn slowly, and so changes take time. But I assure the public that over the next 3 years and the following 5 years of the minister-led government, we will see the fruits of these innovative changes that are being established. Transparency and clarity of information always will have incentive for individuals themselves to become more accountable. This is an important aspect of tax collection, because if our citizens see that the government is transparent, then they are more led to be transparent. Particularly when the government is not only even-handed, but is prepared to collect taxes in a fair way from all citizens. But when the government is not even-handed, then the citizens feel no obligation to pay taxes themselves. Therefore, the establishment of the Revenue Enhancement Unit with updated methodologies and systems have already improved revenue collection by $15 million. When fully operational, this will allow the acquisition of jobs for 28 more Bahamians in this unit alone, and should become completely operational in a few days, July 1st, 2019. As a part of an improving revenue enhancement system is the collection of National Insurance Board revenue. If there is a policy that by law a business license cannot be granted, particularly if there are employees, then no business license should be issued unless National Insurance Board payments are current. We not only cheat the country of which you are a citizen, you cheat the employee who has contributed to your welfare, but have no significant contributions when they need those contributions. This caring government will see this change for the people, because this is the people's time. Therefore, we should not continue to see newspaper headlines of millions owed to the National Insurance Board. Madam President, the youth of our country is the foundation and pillars of our future. Among all the groups of individuals and as a result of this, for these individuals, the government have invested in a small business center. Among all of the initiatives that this government has invested in, the Small Business Center is one of the most important. The visions of the government with regards to this will help to break the cycle of poverty, dependence on government, and hopelessness for the future. For our young people, the reversal of these things cannot even be quantified as to how this will change the landscape of hundreds of individuals, not only for today, but for the future. Concurrently, thousands of small businesses, for a total number of 3,500, as the AG had indicated, are registered with Small Business Development Center. To date, 13 businesses have been approved for funding through grants, equities, and loans. A very important and necessary component of the program is that there is training, advising, and research components of the program. It is also important to note that the Bahamas Development Bank, the Bahamas Entrepreneurial Venture Fund, and 2 commercial banks have joined in funding this initiative. Madam President, one of the major contributing factors to the increase in our financial status today is the tourism industry. In tourism, we have a small dynamo with a huge personality who, along with his great team, are doing a fantastic job in tourism. The Minister of Tourism, Denisio de Aguilar. He is definitely the right man for the job. He has increased our tourism numbers significantly. We have not only an increase in cruise passengers, but also stopover passengers. We have agreements with cruise lines for development of Coco Key, Ocean Key, Lighthouse Point, Grand Bahama Port, among others. The cruise ships are content with the current Bahamian government. As aspiring entrepreneurs with access to the Small Business Development Center funds, if eligible, young folks get involved, take advantage of what opportunity this caring government has created for you, particularly in the area of tourism. On the issue of tax relief measures, the government has always been fully aware of how increased taxes may negatively impact the most vulnerable among us. And we must measure that against revenue enhancement. We must look at the needs of our people and how to meet those needs while maintaining a viable economy for all. Significant tax relief measures are seen in the list of items that are duty reduced or duty free. One of the items that I am particularly pleased about, in addition to school items, are the lack of duty on musical instruments, which are now duty free. I have seen what band participation have done for our children, especially those in the economically deprived areas. And so therefore, this can be one of the more positive aspects of removing the duty. VAT relief from BPL bills, that is the electricity bills, for amounts less than $300 has now been made permanent. Members of the opposition have made light of this, but are they brave enough to tell the 23,500 households that have benefited from this program that it means nothing? Unfortunately for me, my household was not one of those lucky ones. But I trust there are some of our colleagues here who were so blessed. One of the most important contributors of all the budget initiatives is to ensure that we have a generation who succeeds us have the ability and the initiative to not only follow, but enhance and improve what is currently being done fiscally in this country. To this end, this caring, minister-led government, along with an insightful Minister of Finance and Minister of Education, have been instrumental in enhancing the education and training of our children, from kindergarten to tertiary level education. Madam President, we will be exposing our children to mandatory preschool, so children enter the first grade knowing numbers, letters, colors, shapes, and reading readiness. The importance of this skill will significantly decrease the number of children who enter first grade without these special training. And these are children who do so, enter first grade and never catch up. What happens with a large number of these children is well known. We go through social promotion, never reading, and therefore never really learning. they become angry, feeling left out, excluded, and are ripe for gang membership. We are improving and enhancing the hands-on and academic training at BTVI and making attendance at the University of Bahamas tuition-free. Collectively, these three initiatives are the most important investment we can make as a country, preparing our youth for their future and the country's future. Madam President, infrastructure deficiency is a real and present danger in our community. And our country faces this problem on a daily basis when we look at the unstable buildings around our community. Public-private partnership is a route by which this can be addressed. The Prime Minister has alluded to this with the mobilization of private sector resources, experience, and expertise. One of the most important phenomena of this kind of relationship is that not only the primary financial sources can participate, but so can the Bahamian public. This is an interesting and unconventional concept whose time has probably come because it is the people's time. One of the most vexing problems we have in our community today is the situation not only of our healthcare services, but the healthcare of our people. 12% of the recurrent budget is allocated to health, plus $70 million as insurance premium. Lower, when we look at healthcare dollars spent per individual in the world, lower income countries spend $60 per person. Higher income countries spend $270 per person. I have no idea what kind of country we are relative to health because we spend $978 per person. Typical of a much higher income country. This ranks us among the top 5 in our healthcare reality. This is frightening. Life expectancy on average is 75.7. Males at 72, females at 78. However, we must know that murders, although decreasing, still remain the single greatest cause of productive life in years lost. This, fellow colleagues, is unacceptable. When we look at the fact that as afraid as individuals are of cancer, it's not the greatest cause of loss of life in our community. It's the cardiovascular diseases from diabetes, hypertension, that kills us. And one of the things that is difficult to get across to our communities is we talk about the 16 per 1,000 live births of our infant mortality, but we must remember that these children are being carried internally. Birth is given, but they are in the same milieu of illness as the individuals who carry them. And so it is imperative, if we were ever to get this number of 16 per 1,000 live births down, then we must improve the health of the individuals who carry these children. Okay? We look at the United States and they are 6 per 1,000. That number is collectively, because for women of color, that number is significantly higher. We look at obesity in our community, and it's getting worse. In our community, 79% of our people are overweight, 46% are obese. In the world population, 39% are overweight, 13 are obese. So when we look at those numbers, we are in trouble. Obesity increases the risk of cancer in kidneys, liver, breast, colon, uterine, and gallbladder. And the three highest numbers of cancer deaths comes from uterine, breast, and colon. So we need to look at what we are doing to ourselves. And that is why it is such an enigma for our government, not only in planning, but giving the healthcare dollar to our people. Type 2 diabetes, renal failure, stroke, and cardiac disease are simply taking us up. We look at the renal failure that we get from hypertension and diabetes. And in our community, we have a total of 600 individuals on dialysis on almost a daily basis. How can we survive? The government must outsource over 250 of those patients to private units in order for them to have any quality of life and have the diseases treated. We are killing ourselves. And so when we look at the recommendations of our lifestyle, we must, it is imperative that the government provide funding not only for treatment of illness, but for the prevention of illness. The government and the Minister of Health are totally committed to breaking this cycle and improving the health and therefore the lives of our people. I would just like to mention here that a significant part of dealing with the health of our communities is the presence of clean water. And I would like to congratulate the Minister of Works and the chairman, the executive chairman of the Water and Sewage Corporation, who has put the development of water in our communities on their shoulders. In 2011, plans were developed for a massive water improvement system across the country. The previous administration states they could not complete it because it took them 4 years to get the loan to do it. The then Minister of Works and now party leader did not lay 1 inch of pipe in his constituency or any other. Not 1 inch. Not only is he the current leader, he was the Minister of Works responsible for getting the pipes laid.
Point of order.
And
Point of
did
order.
lay an inch.
Point of order. Madam President, the member is misleading this honorable place.
Is that your point of order, Doug? Senator, sorry.
Yes, because the record should reflect that in Grand Bahama, the potable water initiative for East and West Grand Bahama was a part of the Ministry of Works initiative, where residents of East Grand Bahama for the first time had access to potable water. In excess of about a mile worth of pipe was laid, as well as in West Grand Bahama, in areas where individuals did not have running water for years. So it was this initiative which stemmed, it's a branch from the Caribbean Development Bank loan that was put in place for further development of potable water throughout the Commonwealth of Bahamas.
Thank you, Senator. Now, Senators, thank you for your clarification, Senator, but let's not get caught up in this chamber as another one about whose pipe was longer than the other. So, okay. The point is, we're not dealing with size in here today. So let's move on, please.
However, as a point of clarification, my comment was in the island that he represented, which okay. So that is the clarification. And I am happy that the people in Grand Bahama had a mile long of pipe laid. Not an inch. In addition to which, on the island of Long Island, 18 miles of piping has been contracted to be laid.
Let's move on, Senator.
Now, as I continue in the area of health, infectious the presence of infectious diseases is significant. We look at Zika, influenza, dengue, and chikungunya. And I would like to state that the comprehensive manner, particularly during the Zika outbreak, a comprehensive manner in which the environmental health sprayed our communities was more than beneficial in reducing and making virtually absent the presence of Zika in our community, the results of whom we know in other countries was devastating. When we look at HIV/AIDS, we have been able to decrease vertical transmission, and that is from mother to infant, from a high of the mid-30s to less than 2%. We continue to work on this, and hopefully by 2020, our goal is to eradicate HIV in our community. Access to nutritional counseling and education is mandatory. The increase in the number of bread basket items has been expanded, and hopefully this will improve the type of dietary intake that our people are seeing. We still have issues in mental health, violence and trauma, and their root causes must be looked at. The question arises as to whether there should be a re-amalgamation of the Ministry of Health and the Public Health Authority. This is an open question at this point in time. However, it should improve efficiency with one governance of the sector, improved accountability and productivity, ensuring that the goals of the health sector are streamlined and decrease the duplication of services. One of the reasons I think it is so important to get a handle on our healthcare sector, where individuals feel the services at the Princess Margaret Hospital are such that the institution now runs a deficit of $782,596 plus $1,000 in unpaid bills. And therefore, it is very difficult to provide a service for which it is impossible to receive any revenue in return. We have to be aware too that we now have a ward in Princess Margaret on which boarders live. We have individuals who actually live in the institution. And until we can improve and decrease the numbers of these individuals and increase the responsibility of the families who have these relatives there, it is always going to be challenging for Princess Margaret, despite the work of the personnel, to do all that it can do. Therefore, Madam President, as I conclude my remarks today on this budget debate, it is important to emphasize that no matter how many bills we pass, what we enact, it is the fiscal budget of the country, one that is citizen-centered, transparent, accountable, that will determine if any law can be enforced. We use the people's money, investing it in services, those same people in services that are uplifting. Fiscal mismanagement, irresponsibility, and lack of transparency, hopefully, are things of the past. The legal and administrative plans that are enacted should assure us of this. Letting the slogan, "The people's time," truly be the people's time. This government is totally committed to this. The new methodology for implementing the precedents of new and of current budgeting standards ensures that we remain transparent in the way we obtain and use the public funds, always making us accountable to citizens of the country, to lift them up through social mobility, availability of opportunities, and economic expansion. Budgeting decisions are always difficult and challenging. Many of us know this from personal experiences. We have never, in large part, been a country of significant struggles for a variety of reasons. This government has assumed a monumental task of changing the status quo in a country that is so politically polarized. However, our leaders are bold, insightful, and committed to the country and its people. Therefore, with faith in God and the common sense of our people, we will be guided to do what is in the best interests of the people now and in the future, even though this may not always be the most popular decision. I would ask each parent and or caregiver that I'm sure there are times when we all have to make decisions, hard decisions, that don't make you popular with families and friends. But if the decision is in their best interests, now and in the future, we have to make that. Parents are aware that when they take out that second mortgage on the home that is 3-5 years away from being paid off, but you do it for that college education, you know that it's a sacrifice worth making. Honest, hard-working people who make sacrifice knows that sacrifices always pay off over time. It takes 4 years of hard work for your student to get that degree. and a few more years added onto that second mortgage or government loan. However, at the end of the day, it will be beneficial as the government makes their decision to the country and its people. So, Madam President, I am delighted to have the privilege of seconding this most comprehensive and insightful budget, which is not only current but futuristic. A budget that is country-oriented and people-centered. Despite the fact that I will not be present to vote on this important item, it is important for me to stress to you, Madam President, and Government Leader, Attorney General, Minister Carl Bethel, and all my colleagues here and the leadership, that I support this 2019-2020 fiscal year budget. And God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Thank you, Senator. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act for the appropriation of divers sums of money for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas on revenue account for the financial year commencing 1st of July 2019 and ending 30th of June 2020. As many. Chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Dr. Michael Darville.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Madam President, before getting into my budget presentation, yes, thank you. This morning in the Tribune, we saw a paid ad. Yes, a paid ad by the Citizens of Universal Healthcare as an all-right-out attack on the Progressive Liberal Party's agenda for healthcare reform in this country. One of the things that really is of great concern to me is this is a paid ad and has nothing to do with the actual print of the Tribune itself, and so everything in the ad is clearly the opinion of a special interest group who decided to respond to the statement I made when the Prime Minister misled the Honorable House. He misled.
I'm sorry, Madam President.
Could you,
I can't say that.
Senators, if there's a point of order, would you please, what's the point of order, please?
The point of order is to suggest that a member of either house actively misled is essentially to accuse them of a fraudulent act. Okay? We all have differences of opinion and differences of interpretation of facts and events. I fully agree with everything on that it says about the BLP. I may not agree with all of the photographs. And so, yes, but having a difference of opinion with you doesn't mean that I tell you you're lying to express a different opinion. Okay, so I would respectfully encourage the honorable member to withdraw the words misled in reference to the most honorable Prime Minister. Thank you.
Okay, no, but Senators, let's be careful. We know what our rules are in terms of referring to people and what was said in the other chambers. So let's be guided by that, please, Doctor. Okay? Let's be guided.
Yes, thank you so much, Madam President. I want to be guided. And I understand very clearly where the AG is coming from. But some things were said in the other place that I completely disagree with. And the factual information that we possess proves contrary to the statements that were made. As a matter of fact, in the daily that followed, there was a letter that was clearly outlined by Mrs. Catherine Wish, which proved that a contract was awarded for the repairs of the children's ward at the Princess Margaret Hospital in October 2016. It is very clear that she said in October. Now allow me to finish. Yes, no, it was said and it was written. And this particular letter indicated that the work for the roof and the work for the windows, the exterior components of the building, were initiated by the Progressive Liberal Party. And anyone who understands construction, after damage to a building, the first thing you must do is to have water seal. So you must protect the roof and the exterior structure before you start renovation work within the structure. It is quite obvious that the information that was handed to the Prime Minister was inaccurate. And the reality is that from that inaccuracy, a press release was done by our administration proving that the information was incorrect. And subsequently, we have the Citizen for Universal Healthcare. And it's very interesting, they use universal healthcare, a concept that was put in place by the Progressive Liberal Party in our component of national health insurance, universal primary health care. The front page clearly indicates or shows a picture of the Princess Margaret Hospital prior to Hurricane Matthew, and is obviously that we did the right thing because we made sure that there was no damage to the windows. Subsequently, the picture below shows post-Hurricane Matthew damage to the children's ward. And what is so interesting is someone has indicated by putting a picture in the newspaper of some conceptual drawings from the Beck Group that was put in place by the Progressive Liberal Party, where the current administration is trying to gain credit for. And so when the community of the Bahamas read this kind of political rhetoric and nonsense, they must understand that to believe nothing that you read and half of what you see. Madam President, this afternoon, this afternoon, I rise to give God thanks for his wonderful opportunity to serve and for wisdom and guidance as I stand to my feet to make my contribution to the 2019-2020 budget debate. Madam President, this administration has tried to paint a picture with its crayon budget as being people-centric. But the truth of the matter is this budget has nothing to do with people. It's all about giving tax breaks to the rich and special interest groups on the back of the poor and the middle class of this country.
That sounds good. Let's clap for that.
The Free National Movement administration is playing with the numbers in an attempt to fool some people into believing that they are doing a good job managing the economy. But they must realize that the Bahamian people are stronger. We are wiser. And most of us can see straight through the smoke screen of this hapless administration. Madam President, this morning I have a lot to say. I only got an hour and a half to do it, and so I got to really be careful and manage my time.
90 power-packed minutes, man.
But before I get to the meat of my contribution, with your leave, I would like to take a few minutes to thank the Bahamian people from all walks of life for their prayers and unwavering support as we must, as an organization, to rebuild and regain this government in 2022. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our leader, the Honorable Philip Brave Davis, for this wonderful opportunity to serve. Our leader is not only a compassionate man, but one who connects with the small man, but one who has the intellectual ability and the political will to handle the complex issues facing the nation. In a recent meeting in Freeport, filled with PLP stalwart councilors, he outlined the scientific findings of a recent polling confirming that this F&M administration is swiftly losing popularity, and the PLP is well on its way for victory in 2022.
Amen. Speaker.
Rebuilding from the ashes of our crushing defeat at the polls in 2017 is not easy. But our defeat taught us an effective lesson that governance must always revolve around the people
The ministers have.
and ensuring
You're giving the
that
ministers.
opportunities are created to positively affect people and not talk about people. Madam President, here's an action speaks louder than words. After 2 years of governance and 3 budget cycles, the Free National Movement continue to talk what they think is a good talk, but fail to walk the right walk. They prove over and over again that they are not connected with people and that their policy decisions support and protect the rich. I want to say that again. The Free National Movement policy decisions support the rich, the powerful and the special interest groups on Bay Street, and the rich foreigners in Lightfoot Key. They are content with continuing with the 2017 campaign and playing political games at the expense of the small man who must now pick up the slack for the wealthy, who should be mandated by law to carry their fair share of the tax burden. Compounding this matter, Madam President, the Minister of Finance seemed more concerned with numbers and balancing his budget to help this external agencies rather than addressing the pressing issues facing the poor and the middle class of this country. They are still on the campaign trail. Failure to govern and still believe that campaigning will win them the next general election. Madam President, as far as I'm concerned, this is a slap in the face to the thousands of new and young voters who supported the Free National Movement with their fake change agenda in the last general election. A few weeks ago, Bahamians everywhere listened and watched with complete despair as the Minister of Finance read his flat, unimpressive 2019-2020 budget communication.
Real snooze.
But beside decreasing the duty on school supplies and other items, spoke to no new policies for growing the economy, nothing as it relates to creating jobs, or bring any meaningful relief or hope to struggling Bahamians from Abaco to Inagos. Madam President, what is so disingenuous with this administration? They continue to blame the PLP administration for all of their failures. Everything go wrong is the PLP. Hey man, it's 2 years in governance, man. Stand on your own 2 feet. While trying to take credit. You know what's so interesting about it? They blame the PLP when they make a mistake, while trying to take credit for every single government project put in place by the Progressive Labour Party, and then turn around and pat themselves on the back for a job well done.
Yeah.
They have no shame. I want to say that again. The Free National Movement have no shame.
You're shameless.
Madam President, all we got to do is open our eyes and look at the F&M landscape. Most government ministers are out to lunch. Let's face it, they're sleeping on the job, lost in their own bureaucracy and accomplishing nothing tangible, while the Prime Minister is trying to micromanage ministerial portfolios he knows nothing about. Consequently, he is neglecting Grand Bahama. I want to say that again. The Prime Minister of this country is neglecting Grand Bahama and investments which fall under his own portfolio, but he won't be mixed up in everything else. Madam President, we have a cabinet now where the blind is leading the blind. And it seems that everyone around the table knows it and realize they can do a better job. But the situation seems hopeless for this cabinet administration. Madam President, no lie, lasts forever. And in just 2 years of governance, the Bahamian people have realized that this administration cannot be trusted. And their failed policies continue to demonstrate that they came to office without a plan. That's where the problem starts. Madam President, after the budget communication by the member of East Grand Bahama, we on this side was left with more questions than answers. And like every right-thinking Bahamian, are still trying to determine why this administration is unable to meet its projections. And why are they fudging the numbers, trying to create the impression that they have? Madam President, I agree wholeheartedly with the Deputy Leader and Shadow Minister of Finance, the member for Exuma, Ragged Island, the Honorable I. Chester Cooper, how he summed up the 2019-2020 crayon budget during his contribution in the other place. The budget is colorful, but the Minister of Finance failed to collect taxes. The budget was colorful, yet the F&M projection of collected revenue was definitely questionable. Colorful, but the government failed to show where the VAT money and the borrowed money went.
Oh, Carl just told us.
Colorful, but this administration failed to meet its projected revenue. Colorful, but it left us with $230+ million in deficit, and we believe it's more because what they're projecting in the final stages of this budget, of the last budget, will not happen. Colorful, but the government failed to admit that they chopped the capital works budget at the Ministry of Works by some $80 million. Held back payments for contracted workers, neglected to maintain government infrastructure, all in an attempt to hide the deficiencies that they have put in place and to make their figures look good. That's what you call fudging the numbers. I know the man talk, I know the
Running now. The waters are running. I can
Madam President, who do they think they're fooling? Where is the transparency and accountability the F&M keep talking about? Just words, no action.
How many inches of...
After peeling through the layers of political rhetoric, one can only find that the administration, this minister-led administration, we understand why you choose to eliminate VAT on crayons, paper, and pencils. It was simply that you wanted to color away your incompetence and consistent blunders over the last 2 years. So you made a lot of crayons.
This is poetic.
Madam President,
This is poetic.
the members opposite dodged the midterm budget debate in order to save face and simply to buy more time to play with the revenue projection numbers. We believe that the projected revenue, the deficit that you keep talking about is underestimated, and time will tell. But no lie lasts forever. And today, the people of this country are demanding accountability and transparency from all ministers and their relative ministries.
We need to eat, man.
You're right. People are hungry in this country. And when we look at the social service budget,
Starving the car.
we realize that there is nothing of substance to assist those individuals throughout our family islands who are constantly having difficulty to find food. Madam President, this administration increased taxes on the backs of Bahamian people by 60%, while making no adjustments to the social service budget or making any adjustments to the minimum wage to assist those individuals who are constantly in trouble.
Yeah, on a point of order.
Make sure my time. What's my time?
Yeah, my point of order is based on the fact that the Senator Darwin is misleading the Senate. And when he said there are no adjustments made for the help to the needy in the social services budget, that is not true. All of the assistance items, from food assistance to rental assistance to high school to school uniform assistance, they were all increased. Those line items were all increased, as was said very ably by the minister, Minister Campbell, in the other chamber. So I would like for him to, I invite him to either substantiate what he said or to withdraw those comments.
Thank you so much, cousin. That was well put. The point that I'm making is that when we look at the 60% increase in value-added tax versus the projected increase in the social service budget, there is a shortfall that I believe that the government should fix to ensure that individuals who find themselves in a difficulty to find food have access to a department that is sensitive towards the people. You said it's the people time, you know. So put resources in place that reflect the needs that is happening on the ground. Madam President?
Senator Darrell has not addressed the issue that I raised. The issue of subsistence in the budget and assistance in the various line items, whether it's food, whether it's school uniform, whether it's rental allowance, that's totally different from the issue of VAT.
Yeah.
Totally. As a matter of fact, most of those items are VAT exempted.
No, but that's not the argument.
That's not the
he's
argument.
putting.
That's not the argument that I'm putting. Minister, it seems like you're caught up with the exact number. I want to point to you on page 137 of the Department of Social Services. You would see that from last year to this year, there's a $700,000 decrease in the budget. No, there's a $700,000 decrease in the budget. We believe that this $700,000 decrease in the budget should have been put towards social assistance. That is the point that I'm trying to make. If you want to query about the $100,000 increase that we see in the social service budgets for food items, we believe that that's inadequate. And we felt that that $700,000 that was taken from the Department of Social Services should have remained and be reallocated for food assistance. That's the point that I'm trying. Madam President?
You're making about that, though.
Yeah.
About that.
No. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And between me and you, let me finish my presentation. I withdraw the statement. I don't want to be interrupted. I withdraw the statement and I use my definition for clarification.
That's what you did.
Okay.
Two foods. Read the numbers. You can't. He's more. Let's go.
Yeah, just to prove my point, right? What Senator Darrell said was that there was a decrease in the assistance items in the budget of social services to the needy and to the poor. We're saying that is not true, and that is and we can. There's one example here, for example, grant to charitable organizations. Last year it was $683,000. This year is $783,000, an increase of $100,000. This is just one example.
Okay, that's fine.
But you can go.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Minister. I appreciate you showing that. As a matter of fact, the point that I was trying to make, I've already clarified. If you want to point to a number, I withdraw that statement because the overall point that I'm making is that the Department of Social Services budget was decreased by $700,000, and we believe that money could have been used for other purposes. And so I accept what you say, and I'm prepared to move on. I withdraw the statement. Madam President, as I begin my contribution to matters related to the Ministry of Health, the PHA, and the Department of Public Health, I must seize this opportunity to state how disappointed I was to hear the Prime Minister use the sick children in an attempt to discredit the PLP. I was disgusted after hearing the barrage of untruths statement about the children's ward at the Princess Margaret Hospital, and was even more appalled at his assertion that the former administration would rather party than look at sick children in reference to the allocation of funds to that unit. What a heap of garbage. The facts clearly demonstrate something completely different. So if you want to grandstand in the other place, you can go ahead, but you better get your facts right. Madam President, while the member for Angleston was very prompt in correcting the untruth, the Prime Minister must apologize to the Bahamian people in light of the letter from the Public Hospitals Authority confirming that in 2016, under the Progressive Labour Party's administration, a contract was awarded to Guarantee Construction Company for roof and window repairs in the sum of $379,487. The project commenced, and I want to say it again so the AG can hear this. The project commenced in October 2016 and was completed in July 2017. The letter further states that plans are in progress for renovation of the interior of the Children's Ward South, and that the work is expected to commence in the upcoming year. Madam President, the record clearly shows that the contract was issued immediately following Hurricane Matthew in October 2016. And this picture right here is so disingenuous because they are producing pictures post-Hurricane Matthew, and yet we have proof that on October 2016, a contract was awarded and the work was completed months after the PLP left office. Anyone in this place would know that it would have been a disaster for any contractor or any government to begin interior works of the unit while the exterior work was incomplete. But this stop, review, and cancel administration did absolutely nothing. And this is the point I want to make. You want to talk about sick children? We left office in May 2017. We fixed the roof, we fixed the windows, we sealed the building. You sat on it for 2 years. And now that the Prime Minister decided to bring it up in the other place, you produce a letter that the work will start this year. In fact, Madam President, on June the 21st edition of the Nassau Guardian was stated that the unit is now being used for storage. The Free National Movement decided to use the Children's Ward South for storage after 2 years, and got the nerve to talk about the Progressive Labour Party is partying during Carnival. Then you must be obviously sleeping. Something as important as the Children's Ward, you come to office and you sit on it for 2 years and want to blame the PLP? You got to be joking, man. Madam President, I'm not surprised, however, because the Children's Ward was not the only project that run under the stop, review, and cancel by this administration and stalled. It took 2 years for them to complete the Corey Newbold Ward, which this propaganda group decided to put in the picture. A ward that was started by the Progressive Labour Party that should have been completed within 9 months. It took you 2 years, only because it's a PLP project, and you got the nerve to show it in here, but you must get your facts right. These projects started under the Progressive Labour Party. We lost the general election. We conceded to that. But if we were still government, they would have been completed. Madam President, it is also painful to see that despite detailed plans, inclusive of approved architectural drawings for the Accident and Emergency Department, the maternity ward, and many clinics in the Family Islands, there is no sign of relief for patients who have no other choice but to use these public essential services, and that's sad. Again, I could only assume, since there was no evidence to the contrary and no report laid in the other place by the Minister of Health, that these essential works are still in progress, or possibly, again, under the hands of the stop, review, and cancel mode put in place by this Free National Movement administration. Madam President, I want to be fair and give credit where credit is due. In contrast, when the PLP came to office in 2012, we met the now talked about critical clear block under construction. This work was started under the former Ingram administration. And in fact, if my memory serves me right, the now Prime Minister was the then Minister of Health. Madam President, we did not stop, review, and cancel that essential project. Rather, we continued with it to its completion. In fact, we had to borrow millions of dollars from First Caribbean Bank to purchase the state-of-the-art equipment that the current Minister of Health loves to brag about, as no funding was left in place by the former administration. The record would reflect that we did not complain. Zip it, not complaining in the media every day talking about how things so bad at the PMH. We kept our mouth shut. As we are aware that governance is continuous, we're mature enough in the PLP to realize that, and that health care of our people is a priority and should always be a priority, devoid of politics. Madam President, during the 5 years of the last PLP administration, I want to take my time because this kind of paid political rhetoric undermined and trying to destroy the reputation of the PLP, particularly our great legacy in healthcare reform. It's important that the people of the Bahamas understood what we did in healthcare. Madam President, during our 5 years in the last PLP administration, which ended in May 2017, the visible effects of a sustained national program for health reform included significant upgrades in infrastructure, equipment, and service enhancement. Additionally, we demonstrated to the hard-working staff across the public sector that the Progressive Liberal Party was keenly aware of the challenges they face in their working environment. And so we moved swiftly to lay a plan for infrastructure upgrade. Madam President, as a former cabinet minister in the last PLP administration, I am proud to report to this honorable House and the Bahamian people that the PLP delivered sustainable platform for the transformation of our public healthcare system. And that is factual. As I will show in my short time that I have allocated as the spokesman for the Ministry of Health in our party. Madam President, the Ministry of Health, the Public Hospitals Authority, and the Department of Public Health had it on its agenda during our administration 5 areas of priority focus aimed at preparing the wider public healthcare system for the effective implementation of universal healthcare coverage over the short, medium, and long term. We understood that the strengthening of our public healthcare system involves significant, purposeful efforts to ensure that Bahamians can have access to preventative, curative, rehabilitative, and palliative health services without financial hardship, to ensure that there was quality and equity throughout the system. Madam President, when the PLP came to office in 2012, ophthalmology services were experiencing staff shortages, equipment-related challenges, prolonged clinical and surgical appointments, and a limited scope of services, all of which contributed to unmet patient needs. To address these and other service inefficiencies, our administration expanded and strengthened ophthalmology services by engaging some 12 professionals, 2 retinal specialists, and support staff. Additionally, the 2 retinal specialists significantly enhanced the ability for that unit to deliver adequate health care. This initiative represented a major but essential undertaking of our public healthcare system, along with the relocation of the eye clinic to a new facility formerly known as iWorld at the number 26 Soldier Road. Madam President, professional development was high on our agenda, and millions of dollars were spent annually for staff training and development to ensure that members of the healthcare team were equipped to meet the demands of their dynamic environment and evolving global trends. Indeed, Madam President, in recognition of the hard work and dedicated nurses in our country, under our watch, they received the largest promotion exercise ever in the PHA or the Department of Public Health history. The Public Hospitals Authority, which have executed 3 industrial agreements prior to us leaving office. We executed a recognition agreement without requiring staff pool and started negotiations with the senior physician unions for an industrial agreement for consultants. Madam President, physician training and development continued during our administration. Indeed, we had a significant strides with linkages with the University of the West Indies. Our residency programs for the training of specialists in family medicine is a prime example. And we believe because of this program, we have an excess of 30 family physicians, trained physicians in our public sector, some who were deployed to the Family Islands for the first time. Madam President, when we left office, it was estimated that a minimum of 120 additional family physicians were required to provide adequate primary health care for our populations in New Providence, Grand Bahama, and the Family Islands. It is my hope, and I say this with a sincere heart, that this essential program was and is not a part of this administration's stop, review, and cancel agenda. Madam President, prior to leaving office in 2017, the former cabinet of the Bahamas approved the implementation of the Integrated Health Information Management System for the public healthcare system, which was designed to achieve the important goal of one patient, one record approach to patient care. This meant that wherever you may be and you use the public healthcare system, whether you're inpatient, outpatient, accident, emergency, the electronic medical record extends across the entire public healthcare sector, which include the departments of public health, clinics in New Providence and the Family Island. With this approach, no matter where patient access the service, the patient information, laboratory results, and other diagnostic and radiological images would be available in real time for the healthcare provider. This was revolutionary. This was definitely a very important component, and it was essential under the recommendation from our consultants from KPMG that must be in place before the full launch of the Selective Catastrophic Care Program under National Health Insurance. This project was launched in January 2017 with a 2-phase initiative. The first phase was scheduled to go live at the end of 2017, but again, we heard no mention of this initiative in the minister's contribution, so I must conclude that this was perhaps another F&M stop, review, and cancel initiative. Madam President, before the Prime Minister of this country opened his mouth, we need to be armed with the facts. Under our watch, the PLP completed the Child and Adolescent Robert Smith Unit, a 92-bed facility, a 34,000 square foot facility that sits on 1 acre of property and was officially commissioned on the 13th of June, 2016. In addition, Madam President, the Progressive Liberal Party made available the funding to completely transform the nation's only geriatric hospital. The upgrade was critical to improving workflows, inpatient accommodation, and other support services required to foster the necessary therapeutic environment to assist the elderly. This hospital, renovated under our watch, is now considered to be a model in the region. So when you read things like this in the paper, paid ads of just utter foolishness, we need to deal with the facts. Madam President, the redevelopment of the Rand Memorial Hospital on Grand Bahama, which is very dear to all of us, was long overdue. And it was necessary prior to the construction of the newly proposed 150-bed hospital via private-public partnership. And you know what's amazing? When you look at this particular paid ad, they show a picture of a proposed hospital that was the remnants and the work of the Progressive Liberal Party along with the proposed hospital for Grand Bahama. So again, they need to get their facts right. These were all works put in place by the PLP. Madam President, effective January 2015, the 8 Mile Rock Clinic, where we extended the hours to 9 p.m. weekdays. And for the first time ever in Grand Bahama, we brought in one of these family resident specialists and we deployed them at the clinic, not only to come to the clinic during the time, but to actually live at the doctor's residence. And there's more. In April 2013, contracts were awarded for much needed construction work in clinics in High Rock, Hawkesville, McLeanstown, and Sweetens Key. The renovations were part of this administration's continuing effort to expand and upgrade facilities and optimal care to residents no matter where they reside. We realize that a time has come with the launch of national health insurance that clinics throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas must be adequate, because we go places, and a lot of us are very fortunate to travel throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and we see some of these healthcare facilities that do not make the mark. It was imperative for us, before we launched national health insurance, that we did the necessary work to bring these clinics up to the standard necessary to provide care. And we were fortunate enough to accomplish that important mandate before leaving office in 2017. In addition, in October 2013, the much-needed renovation and repairs took place in 8 Mile Rock to the facilities in the back where the nurse and doctors usually reside that were damaged as a result of Hurricane Matthew. Madam President, in West End, we constructed a new clinic and doubled the space to meet the increased need for the people in that area. The clinic was equipped with state-of-the-art equipment and furniture, which was a component of the transformation necessary to provide adequate health care for those individuals in that community. The services included dental care, trauma services, portable digital x-ray machines, and ambulance services were also decentralized in that community to improve the efficiency response and to improve the ability to move critical patients from that area to the Rand Memorial Hospital. Madam President, the Progressive Liberal Party believes that all Bahamians should be afforded the opportunity to have adequate health care in their communities. And this particular facility was all a part of a redevelopment program that would support the investments in that area, like Old Bahama Bay and components of the GIN project. Madam President, with respect to Freeport, an aggressive plan was developed by the Progressive Liberal Party to transform the delivery of health care for our people on that island. In this regard, we engaged the services of the Beck Group, like how the services of the Beck Group were engaged by the Ministry of Health for the upgrade of the Princess Margaret Hospital. That's it? Okay, no, I thought you were saying. But perhaps is this a time? Huh?
Okay, fine.
Madam President?
Mr. Sorry, are you at a point where you
I could continue from this point here.
Right, so you can, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Madam President, on that note, I beg leave to, there are two things. Before I do so, I think I should formally state that with regard to certain matters on social media, that nothing political, that there has in fact been a casualty event involving a commercial bus that was involved in the transport of certain passengers from a cruise line in South Eleuthera. There have been some casualties, as yet no deaths, but There have been casualties. The U.S. Coast Guard, first of all, the Minister of Health and the Minister of National Security have, jointly with the consent, of course, of the higher-ups, the Prime Minister initiated the National Disaster Plan. So all resources are being allocated to swiftly send air ambulances to South Eleuthera to bring the injured persons who may need hospitalized care to New Providence. The United States Coast Guard has landed several helicopters at Odyssey and is prepared to do what they have to do for their citizens who may require more complex interventions. And so I would just confirm this, but we also pray to the Most High that all is well, that nobody should perish, and we hope that those who are suffering will be speedily relieved of the pain or afflictions. On that note, Madam President, I would now move that the business of the Senate be suspended until 2:30 p.m. this afternoon, 24th of June, 2019. If I may obtain a second.
Second. It has been moved and seconded that the business of the Senate suspend to 2:30 this afternoon. All those in favor would say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The business of the Senate stands suspended to 2:30 p.m. this afternoon.